because I think Ethereum is having its Bitcoin 2017 moment this year, where Wall Street is finally getting behind ETH. I think by the year end, it's not unreasonable to think 7,000, even 12 or 15,000 could happen.
Tom Yong-Lee je američki finansijski analitičar i strateg, suosnivač i šef istraživanja u kompaniji Wallstreet Global Advisors. Pored toga, Lee je predsjedavajući chairman kompanije Bitmain Technologies, rudarske firme koja je napravila značajne korake ka akumulaciji 5% Ethereum rezervi. Pogledajte ovaj video do kraja i saznajte njegovu predikciju za Ethereum i Bitcoin, kao i razloge koji stoje iza toga. Pre nego što krenemo sa videom, kratak podsjetnik da Bitcoin, Ethereum i preko 500 drugih kriptovaluta možete kupiti na Bitpanda menjačnici. Također, Bitpanda sada omogućava i margin trading na određene coine i tokene. Linka tutorijalu i sign up link sa bonusima nalaze se u opisu ovog videa.
Actually, if people go back to 2017, because I think Ethereum is having its Bitcoin 2017 moment this year, where Wall Street is finally getting behind ETH. You know, Bitcoin was 1,000 in the early part of 2017, and it wasn't until August, and then it went straight up. I mean, literally went straight up.
We've definitely haven't seen this level of Wall Street interest in ETH, the asset, and Ethereum, the network, in like 4 or 5 years now. And I mean, we're seeing the appetite from Wall Street coming in all different corners of the Ethereum ecosystem. When people ask you about why buy an ETH treasury company over a Bitcoin treasury company?
Well, first, I'm a big fan of Bitcoin. You know, I think Bitcoin is the way, and our work on the fund stretch side shows Bitcoin can get to the $1.5 million per coin. So Bitcoin still has a huge story ahead. Yeah, but Bitcoin and Ethereum operate in different parts of how the world is financializing. And that's the principal difference to me, because Ethereum represents the world financializing onto the blockchain, which is not Bitcoin's goal, and the AI world, creating basically a digitally native way to bridge the real world and, digital security. So that's, to me, why someone wants to own Ethereum treasuries. Ethereum treasuries are really the only way for a US equity investor to get exposure to Ethereum, unless they're buying ETH directly or an ETH ETF. But if you're an institution and this is one of the biggest themes, I don't think they're going to just say, well, in my fund, my $50 billion large cap fund, Ethereum's the biggest trade, so I'll buy JP Morgan. They might, but they're better off saying, how can I be directly exposed to Ethereum? And they can't really buy an Ethereum ETF because that's not within the parameters of their fund. So I think, to me, the US equity market professional investor looks at Ethereum treasuries as really the only way to get exposure to ETH as a macro trade. And remember, 0% of institutions had ownership of Bitcoin. It was 100% retail. And as you know, in the last 8 years, Bitcoin has the biggest narrative is it's digital gold. It's a store of value. Of course, it's a great payment system, everything else. But really what's resonated is that there's a group of people that own gold. And we did studies back then to show gold was primarily owned by baby boomers. So millennials would own Bitcoin the way boomers owned gold. We got fired from our institutional clients. We actually had a decline in paying clients at Fundstrat because they thought we completely lost our mind. They said, how can you even recommend something that only drug dealers and dark web people to use, and you're saying it's a legitimate asset class? And so our reputation was actually harmed. But as you know, Bitcoin now is 120,000. So it was 120x. Our clients that invested in and followed us, because we recommended 1% to 2%, for some, it became 100% of their portfolio. So they've gone full degen as a result. And I think that's happening with Ethereum today, because Ethereum's been kind of a dormant chain. People wanted faster networks, or more novel ways to do essentially validation, but Ethereum's had zero downtime. That is what matters to Wall Street. Zero downtime in 10 years. So I think that Wall Street has already decided Ethereum is the chain they're going to build Wallstreet onto.
Where do you see Ether price going, say, the end of this year, or maybe even the end of this cycle, if you still think in terms of cycles, if you think this will play out in the next, 12 to 18 months, let's say? Where do you think we go?
A year ago, Ethereum was at 0.05 ratio to Bitcoin. Right. To me, it's a stronger story, and there's reasons people are using Ethereum. So it's like a narrative. Well, at 0.05 Bitcoin, it's like almost 6,000. So just like saying, give it credit for where it is a year ago versus a year ago, it should be 6,000. But of course, there is going to be a lot happening between now and year end, including, other Ethereum treasuries starting to buy Ethereum plus Bitcoin goes up. So I think by the year end, it's not unreasonable to think 7,000, even 12 or 15,000 could happen. And of course, from there, then in 2026, the Fed starts to follow through on what it should be a dovish pivot. So central bank liquidity is rising. And so Ethereum should build upon those price levels.